Stay up, counting all the way up. Counting blessings, yeah, you know we pray up. Way up, pray up. On track, now we going way up. Way up. Now we going way up. Now we going on track, now we going way up. Way up. Now we going way up. Now we going. I got his band like I'm Barry Bonds. Running through the money, but the money's long. I don't love it, but I need it, keep it coming on. Only friendly, me and friends, we don't get along. I put that on my name, that I put them on. I put myself on stage and they sing along. I might book a session, do 100 songs. I'ma let you hear them just to prove you wrong. On track, now we going way up. Don't be used as easy as a layup. Working late, stay up, stay up. Counting all the way up. Counting blessings, yeah, you know we pray up. Way up, pray up. On track, now we going way up. Way up. Now we going way up. Now we going. On track, now we going way up. Way up. Now we going way up. Now we going. On track, now we going way up. Don't be used as easy as a layup. Working late, stay up, stay up. Counting all the way up. Counting blessings, yeah, you know we pray up. Way up, pray up. On track, now we going way up. Way up. Now we going way up. Now we going. On track, now we going way up. Way up. Now we going way up. Now we going. Keep the same energy. Work on being better when I'm 70. Your drip is just a water spring. You know I drip different, this is 7 seas. I deal with life different, make that lemon squeeze. Went off for my style and identity. Better bounce back and get the cheddar cheese. I guess that's why they envy me. On track, now we going way up. Don't be used as easy as a layup. Working late, stay up, stay up. Counting all the way up. Counting blessings, yeah, you know we pray up. Way up, pray up. On track, now we going way up. Way up. Now we going way up. Now we going. On track, now we going way up. Way up. Now we going way up. Now we going. I got his band like I'm Barry Bonds. Running through the money, but the money's long. I don't love it, but I need it, keep it coming on. Only friendly, me and friends, we don't get along. I put that on my name, that I put them on. I put myself on stage and they sing along. I might book a session, do 100 songs. I'ma let you hear them just to prove you wrong. On track, now we going way up. Don't be used as easy as a layup. Working late, stay up, stay up. Counting all the way up. Counting blessings, yeah, you know we pray up. Way up, pray up. On track, now we going way up. Way up. Now we going way up. Now we going. On track, now we going way up. Way up. Now we going way up. Now we going. On track, now we going way up. Don't be used as easy as a layup. Working late, stay up, stay up.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Everybody hear me all right? All right. Harold, do you want to take it, talk about your credit story?
Sure. I'm Harold Bain from Fiat. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. Since we don't have too many people, we have books to give away. I think we'll have enough for everybody. But how mine started was I got into real estate and I said, how can I make this a lot easier? Sorry about that. How can I make this a lot easier and acquire a lot of properties kind of quickly? All right. So if you think about it, I mean, saving to pay cash for a house, I mean, it takes a while, right? So I'm thinking, how can I make this thing work for me, right? So didn't know any hard money lenders at the time, anything like that. So what I did was I got in contact with a family member, all right, that had a house that was paid off. And I brought him a deal. I said, listen, I said, if you write me a check for the equity in your home. They're like, what? Like, I said, trust me, just listening to me. If you write me a check for the equity in your home, you know, go out, get a HELOC. That's a home equity line of credit. and I will pay you back with interest within 3 months. And like, you sure? I said, yeah, we can write everything up. This is all be legit. And they trusted me. They said, okay, let's try it. And so what I did was, I think it was around about 50,000 at the time. To me, that was a lot of money. Okay, 50 grand, it was a lot. So I go out, they write me the check. I was buying houses at the time for 20 to 30 grand, putting about 10,000 in to fix it up, and then refinancing it, and then paying back the person's loan. And during those 3 months, I was also making those payments as well. So it made it a lot easier, and I was buying houses like maybe 2 or 3 a year. All right, refinancing it, going to the bank, refinancing it, and paying back the loan. So credit is amazing. The other side is, if you are not good at budgeting, things like that, things that we talk about, it's probably not too good. All right, you have to definitely be a person that is serious about your budget and being a person of your word, and that can be trusted, things like that. But if you can eliminate all the other debt, the consumer debt and stuff like that. And that's all I did. I only used debt for things that made money. I would never borrow for consumer debt, stuff like that. If it wasn't making me money, I'm not getting a loan on it. All right. So, and I was very disciplined in that. So I was able to pay back people and do it. And not only that, once we scaled and had about 9 or 10 properties, we started paying them all off. Okay, so we didn't want a whole lot. I mean, Matt's story is a little different than mine. Well, probably a lot different than mine, but I'm very conservative. I don't want a lot of debt. So my plan was to acquire, say, 10 properties, pay them all off, and have just cash flow. All right, so that worked for us, and go from there.
All right, Matt Drew in here. Guys, who's got good credit? All right.
Stop.
Who's
lying.
got
Somebody's
who's got
lying.
shot? Whose credit is shot? Malik, you paying attention? All right, so we got shot credit. Who's got no credit? Tejan, right? Yeah, some young people don't have any credit. All right, this is how I started my credit journey. Is I never had any credit. My dad always said pay cash for everything, right? And I was about to go off to college. I was sick of doing the hand-me-down clothes, shopping for stuff in the clearance rack that nobody wanted at Abercrombie and Fitch to fit in with my high school Pittsburgh Sutherland students. Try to impress people that weren't my friends. And I went to Express, right? And they said, if you open up an Express credit card today, you can save 10% off of your clothing, right? So I was like, I spent that whole thing up, right? 100%. And then I just forgot about it, right? So I had all these like 1MX shirts. Anybody remember what 1MX shirts are? I'm 37 years old, so yeah. So they were all like, solid color shirts and that sort of thing. And I went to college, and I was like, I never paid that bill. But when I graduated, I started looking for jobs, right? Employers were running my credit. And I didn't get a very good job because I had like a low 500 credit score because I had this Express card debt that I never paid. And so I really screwed up my baby credit. And also I couldn't get an auto loan. Couldn't get a new car. And also I wanted to buy a house, and I couldn't buy a house. When you have poor credit, you have limited options, and it can really, really handicap your ability to build long-term generational wealth for yourself and your family. So this is a subject that Harold and I have been wanting to present for a while. And also one that I've been talking to Malik brought up the idea, who's going to introduce our guest speaker tonight, let's do a workshop on credit. And Harold and I were like, yeah, let's do credit, because that's one thing that we really haven't covered yet in our workshops together. So one thing is, definitely we're going to have a one event per month with Buy Back the Rock, Building Wealth in Real Estate. And this is about a holistic, not just real estate, but holistic financial health that we want to have in our programming. So please stay tuned. And because eventually we want to build this audience and build this community up to start filling arenas next year in Rochester and bring in national speakers. national real estate people to come to Rochester. So anyways, I've known our intro speaker, Malik Evans, with ESL for a couple of years now. And Malik recommended that we bring in Chad Rieflin with, is that right, Chad Rieflin? Rieflin, with Consumer Credit Counseling Services of Rochester. There's a lot of, info product, bogus info product that's out there. Spend $2,000 to fix your credit or something like that. And really, we have a wonderful organization in Rochester that has free and also low-cost services to help you get back on track, whether it's goals with homeownership, right, or opening up a business. There's a lot of other, bogus stuff out there in terms of if your credit shot, then get business credit, right? A bank is not. Malik, is ESL going to give you a $10 million loan if you got, great business credit but crappy personal credit? Oh yeah, absolutely. So that's really, really where it starts, and also how to leverage that. Harold and I have built multi-million-dollar real estate portfolios by having good credit and leveraging that to buy cash flowing, appreciating assets in real estate. So I want to introduce Malik Evans of ESL for now. This is our mayor-elect, so please congratulate me in welcoming Malik.
Thanks. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Harold, for having this event. This is a very important topic. Financial health is just as important as physical health. What do I mean by that? Some of the stresses that people have in their lives are actually related to what's going on in their financial lives. So credit is something that I am extremely passionate about. Chad Rieflin, who's here with Consumer Credit Counseling Services, I have known Chad for, biz kids, probably going on 20 years. And Consumer Credit Counseling Services is a great partner at ESL Federal Credit Union that we work with. Credit is important. Credit is so important that when I first met my wife, I didn't talk to her about how many kids she wanted to have or where we wanted to live. You know what the first thing I asked her? What her credit score was. And she probably thought I was crazy, but it is extremely important because your credit can actually determine your destination and allow you to do things that you want to do to be able to go further in your life, particularly as you talk about real estate. And I always tell people having no credit is just as bad as having bad credit. So what do I mean by that? You have to understand why it's important for you to build your credit score and what you can do to improve it. The other thing I want to say to you, and I think Chad will touch on this today, is that if you feel as though right now you are in a place where your credit is not good, that you run away from the phone when it rings because you think it's going to be a debt collector on the other end, or if you're afraid to apply for jobs when they may pull your credit, I want you to know that there is hope out there. Because I've been in the financial services industry for 20 years, and I've seen Chad, I've seen myself help people who have been at the lowest levels of credit, maybe a 350 or 400, and I've seen them increase their score. It takes patience, it takes knowledge, and it takes taking the acquisition of knowledge, the stuff that you're going to hear tonight, and then applying it. So for all of us, the question is as it relates to credit, how do you take the acquisition of knowledge and make it turn into the application of knowledge? And then when you do that, you can see your score go up to 750, 800, 850, higher. So you have the ability to be able to do that. So Chad is going to give you some great tools today. Consumer Credit Counseling Services of Rochester is a gem in this community. We have a great strategic partnership with Consumer Credit Counseling Services at ESL. We refer folks to them regularly. They are the real deal. And a lot of these other places that are out here are places that lack integrity. They may take your money, but they don't get you the results. So tonight, I hope that you are able to sit back, relax, enjoy the information that Chad will put out. And then later on, your follow-up, your homework will be, how do you take what you heard and apply it? How do you take what you heard and then reach out and make a phone call or send an email to CCCS of Rochester so they can get you on the right track? So without further ado, I want to bring up Chad Rieflin from Consumer Credit Counseling Services of Rochester. Chad.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you tonight. I want to thank Matt, thank Malik for their fantastic intros. It's funny, years ago, these types of events would have been very sparse. And there had been a lot of less discussion about things like where our credit score is at. And it's funny because just today, a colleague of mine and I were talking together and just emphasizing how important it is for us to talk more about these types of issues, because they're things that we all deal with. They're things that are important to every single one of us in whatever journey we might be on, whether it's a personal credit journey or we are looking to invest in our community. Personal finance, personal wealth building, credit building is something that is so crucial to every single one of us in what we do. Unfortunately, our culture is not built around talking about these kinds of issues. So I think it is incredible. The work that is being done here, it really encourages me. And again, I feel incredibly blessed and honored to be a part of this tonight. And while this is a huge, huge topic, and there's so many things that we can get into, I'm hoping to just set the stage to have the right conversation. And we're going to set up a lot of Q&A at the end so we could draw out those things that are important to you and to those who are listening today when it comes to their credit journey. So happy to hear the various stories that were shared. And I would echo that and say that no one starts off with perfect credit. And I don't think there's any one of us who would say that we knew automatically how to have great credit or manage our finances, or somebody taught us how to do that. And it's something that's always a continuous journey that we need to be on. I think the other thing that's funny is, we're all trying to do the same things. We're all trying to be in a position where we want to have credit that enables us to reach our goals. We're all trying to save for things that we want to accomplish in the near future and in the long term, and for our retirement. We want to have security. We're all on the same path. So why wouldn't we want to share and talk about those struggles and those challenges that we've had? So I really applaud every single person who is here tonight. So our topic again is healthy credit. And I'd like to frame it up that way because it's all about credit health and financial health and that journey that I mentioned before. So there's a number of things that we're going to touch on that I think will help to set the stage. Number one, I want to define what good credit might actually be and what do we want to focus on to have good credit. Secondly, we're going to talk about getting our credit report and where's the right place to go to do that, how long things stay on our credit report, how we can address things that we might find there that we know need to be corrected. And then we'll get into the real fun stuff of credit scores and how we can address various things that we want to address when it comes to repaying debt and establishing our credit. So let's jump in. And I have this question that I always like to pose to start this off. And that's this. When you hear the term good credit, what do you think that might mean? It's not a rhetorical question. I'm actually going to see if anybody might want to respond. What do you think good credit might mean? Yes, sir. That's a perfect answer. It means you would be considered low risk to a creditor. And there's various things that a creditor or a lender, a bank, a credit union might want to see on our credit report that would indicate to them and let them know that we are someone that they can trust with their money, however much money that might be. So that's what we're going to talk about, is what would they want to see in our credit profile, whether it's a credit score or certain types of information that are going to allow that creditor to say that they trust us. And we know that credit is important for so many different things, not just obtaining loans, but it also affects things like how much we pay for car insurance. It can affect us, in certain job situations as well. If we're handling money, that employer might want to see that we have good credit as well. So it's really incredible how credit has become such an integral part of our society. So a lot of people have different ideas about what's considered good credit or a good credit score, what's important, what's not. And I'm hopefully going to try to do my best to level set that, dispel some myths, and help everyone to feel confident in knowing what they need to do to move forward. So when it comes to good credit, a bank or a credit union or a lender or a creditor would generally look at three things: our character, our capacity, and our capital. They call these the 3 C's of credit. So our character is referring to, as we just mentioned, whether or not we are a risky investment or they see us as one they can trust to lend money to. And the way that most financial institutions are going to figure that out is they're going to look at our credit report. They're going to evaluate the information that's in there. look at a credit score of some sort, and determine whether or not that shows a good history or track record of paying other people back in similar situations. And that's why our credit report and our credit score becomes so important. They're at the top of that list of the 3 C's. So we know quite a bit about that one, right? We hear a lot about our credit and our ability to demonstrate that character. The second one, capacity, is one that we don't think about in the same degree, but it basically just means our capacity to handle that loan that we're applying for. So in other words, do we have demonstrated income or the financial wherewithal to be able to pay that loan back? So there might be some sort of income evaluation that's done, or some, evaluation of financial assets. And that kind of spills into the third one as well, which is our capital. And when a bank or financial institution wants to know about our capital, basically what they want to know, unfortunately, is what can they take back if that loan's not repaid. And often the capital is tied to the thing that we're going to be obtaining the loan for, like a home or a car. And it basically means, can they repossess that item and recoup the loss in the non-repayment of that loan? But in other instances, that financial institution might ask if there's other assets or things that we have that could back up that loan. So if we have those 3 things looking really good, we've got our credit score, our credit report demonstrating good payment history, good track record of paying other similar loans back. We have the income to handle that loan repayment, and there's enough capital to back that up. We're going to be a lot more likely to get that loan. That's the basics of how credit works and what good credit actually means. So the first step that we would want to take in this credit journey, if you haven't done so yet, is to get a copy of your credit report. Now, many folks are using various opportunities out there, services that provide credit reports like Credit Karma or something similar, and that's all well and good. But the one thing you should be aware of is those services don't actually provide your full credit report information, typically, unless you pay for it. The place that we do want to make sure that we go to on a regular basis is annualcreditreport.com. And that's important because that's the service that was set up by the major credit reporting agencies to comply with the law that entitles us to get a free copy of our credit report once every 12 months. And we actually have the right to get one free copy of our credit report from each of the 3 credit reporting agencies, from Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And again, we could do that once every 12 months. So you can actually space those out every few months and get a free credit report every few months on an annual basis. I highly recommend doing that. It's very easy to do. I'm going to show you in a moment, but that will contain all of the information that is possibly reported about you on a personal credit report. You can also do it over the phone, which is a little bit more tedious. So I recommend going to the website, start to finish. Will take you 5 minutes, and you can get that credit report and print it off or save it on your own. This is what that website looks like. Make sure that when you go to annualcreditreport.com, it looks similar to this. If you mistype it or misspell it, sometimes it can redirect you somewhere where you don't want to be. So make sure that you're looking at something that says annualcreditreport.com and asks you to obtain free annual credit reports. Once you do that, there's another screen that just kind of gives you some instructions. But the main thing is you're going to be asked, I did something wrong there. Nope, here we go. You're going to be asked which credit reporting agency you want to obtain that credit report from, and then it'll ask you to fill in your information to be able to do that. So you will have to give your personal information, your name, your address, social security number, date of birth to do this. So it can feel a little bit uncomfortable, but this is normal practice for getting your annual credit report. Another tip that I would give you in getting that annual credit report is to give them as much information as possible when you fill out that form. And that will help the systems to identify your credit report much more easily. In selecting which one you want to receive, even if you're only going to be choosing one of those, or you just want to get one copy of your annual credit report, the other piece of advice I'd give is to check all 3 of those, because that way, if you can't get Equifax for Experian, or the first one there, Equifax, for example, it will automatically take you to Experian or TransUnion to get your your next copy of your credit report. So that's another tip that's generally pretty helpful for folks. So that's where you want to start. Get a copy of your annual credit report. It won't come with your credit score, but as you'll see in a moment here, it's not necessarily that important out of the gate to get your credit score, nor is it the best source to get your credit score online. And I'll explain why in just a moment here. All credit reports are formatted a little bit differently, but the same information should be on there. Your name and address, your personal information, the information about the accounts that you are paying or have paid, and anything else related to your credit profile. What's most important on there is the information about the loans that you have and your payment history on those loans. You might find that there's information that is not accurate about your name and address, and that can be important to address, but it's not as important as the things that show your payment history. So the second thing to do if you do discover an inaccuracy or something that is incorrect is to dispute that piece of information immediately. You could do that online, typically right through the reporting service that you're using through annualcreditreport.com. But the main thing is you want to dispute anything that shows an error when it comes to the payment history that's being reported about you or a balance that you've paid, etc. So anything relating to your actual account information. That's what will affect your credit score. So if we dispute these things and get them corrected, it will also at the same time have a direct impact on our credit score immediately. And the reason why that is because our credit score is calculated from the information that's reported in our credit report. So as soon as that information gets changed, our credit score will also be changed. So disputing inaccurate information is actually the fastest way to improve and change our credit score. So what we want to do is make sure we contact the credit reporting agency directly. So if we are looking at our Experian credit report, we want to do the dispute with Experian, whether that's online or in writing. We want to make sure we explain very clearly what it is that we feel is inaccurate. So if we're saying that the balance on the account is inaccurate, we want to tell them what the balance should be. And then it's also very helpful to include any documentation that could verify our dispute. We do have materials at our office at Consumer Credit Counseling that can help you if you don't want to do it online, if you want to do it through the mail. We have sample dispute letters and other resources that we can provide to you that would be very helpful. But if you go through this process, according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, that reporting agency has to take your dispute and they have to follow up and submit that information to those creditors in question within 30 days. And then they have to give you a written response of their investigation and make any required updates to your credit history. And they have to give you a copy of your credit report that shows those updates that they made. So there's some protections put in place. There have been some issues with this process reported over the years. Personally, I've never had an issue with the process when it's followed in the way that I just described. Again, you just have to be very direct and make sure that you include any documentation that supports what you're saying. But that's definitely the next thing to do after you get your credit report so that it will recalculate anything that needs to be corrected and also improve our credit score. So next thing that I thought would be very important to talk about is how long certain items can stay on our credit report. There's been a lot of questions about this over the years, and folks have understanding that, things come off after 7 years. And specifically what we need to understand is it's certain types of negative pieces of information that will come off our credit report after 7 years. So as you can see, if it's a collection, late payment, Chapter 13 bankruptcy, those things are scheduled to be reported for 7 years from the date they became a negative piece of information. So the 7 years isn't related to how long an account can stay on our credit report or some other piece of information. It's related to how long an event can be reported, like a late payment or something negative. And that's pretty much a hard time frame. Secondly, that's not the same as the statute of limitations, which is how long we could be legally held liable for something. So this 7 years only relates to how long information can actually be reported on our credit report. That's a very important distinction to make sure you understand and you investigate if you're trying to figure this out. Now, related to this, another nice feature about the annual credit reporting service is it will often tell you how long certain things are scheduled to be reported on your credit report. So you don't have to do the math and figure it out. It will just tell you exactly by which date something is going to be removed. You can see there's some other reporting periods, such as Chapter 7 bankruptcies, which we'll talk about in a moment here. Those will be reported for 10 years. Inquiries, which means somebody checked our credit because we applied for a loan. Those will remain on for 2 years. And I'm going to talk about inquiries very specifically in a moment here because there's been a lot of misconceptions about that. But some things can stay on our credit report indefinitely. Unpaid student loans, taxes, child support, anything the government has their hands in can stay on our credit report indefinitely if they're unresolved. So those are the items we want to make sure we are very conscious of and careful about when we address them. Next, we'd probably want to understand how these things affect our credit score. And I've got a couple examples of credit scores here. First, to illustrate the fact that there are many different types of credit scores. In fact, when you're shopping around online for credit scores, there can be dozens of different credit scores. But what I have here are the two most common credit scores that are used by financial institutions. The first is the FICO score. The second is the Vantage score. The FICO score is still definitely the most widely used form of credit score. And then the Vantage score is another one that a lot of financial institutions are starting to use. But even though they are different credit scores, you could see that the way that they are calculated and what's put into that calculation is still very similar. And that would be comprised of our payment history, our balances, how long we've had our credit for, and the different types of pieces of information that are in there, what kinds of accounts we have. And then secondly would be how long we've had that established overall. So when it comes to positive influences of our credit score, number one would be paying our accounts on time. Paying all of our loans and things that are considered credit, having a good on-time payment history with those items. That's what will build our credit score more than anything else over time. Secondly would be to make sure that our balances on unsecured credit remain low. Unsecured credit means the loans that are not backed by collateral, so things like credit cards. And there's a threshold as to how high those balances should be on our credit cards compared to our credit limits. And that threshold is 30%. So anytime that we have balances that creep up over 30% of our limits on our credit cards, our credit score, unfortunately, will start to take a hit. In addition, the length of time, as I said, so the longer that we have our credit established for, the better it's going to benefit our credit score. So sometimes the only thing we can do, unfortunately, is wait and continue to do what we're doing and to allow that length of time to pass. Having a good mix of credit types is also important. So in other words, making sure that we've demonstrated that we are using multiple types of credit, such as secured loans and unsecured loans. So that credit score is built to kind of look at the whole entire picture. And the way that credit scores work is they compare our information and our data to what they call a statistical model. And when we are doing as well as or better than the kind of typical person, we earn points. When we're not doing as well as someone in that certain category, we tend to lose points. So that's another important distinction when it comes to credit scores. We could have nothing bad in our credit history and still not have a healthy credit score because we just haven't demonstrated that we are doing well in that particular category. So some really quick recommendations before we kind of move into the final part of this talk is to number one, establish good payment history on credit cards. And it seems funny to a lot of folks that I'd come out to talk about credit and I would say, make sure that you have credit cards. And if you don't have one, go get one. And the reason why I say that is because positive payment history on credit cards is the number one boost to your credit score. And the reason is because out of all things that we prioritize, that we need to make sure that we keep on track, most people will prioritize credit cards the lowest, right? So if we have a choice between having to pay our mortgage, having to pay our car loan or having to pay our credit cards, well, we're probably going to let the credit cards go, right? Because we want to make sure we keep our house and we don't want our car to get repossessed. So the logic is, if your credit card payment history is positive, then that must mean everything else is probably doing pretty well, right? So positive payment history and all those things are very important. But if you don't have anything else going on, the best way to get started in establishing a good credit score is with positive payment history on your credit cards. Yep. Yep. Right. All right. So the question was, if I'm paying my credit cards off in full every single month, but the balances that I'm charging are exceeding that 30% threshold, what do you do? And how does that affect you? Is that correct? All right. So unfortunately, the amount that we charge on our credit cards is reported as our balance. And that's what's calculated into that utilization ratio that we've been talking about. So I've worked with a lot of folks, especially small business owners, where they're using credit cards that are in their personal name to manage their business expenses, which is a great way to do that. But maybe the business expenses are like maxing out the card every month, but they're paying it in full. So their payment history is great, but unfortunately, that utilization ratio will just take a huge shot. So there's only two things to do, unfortunately. Either to spend less and make sure that how much we're spending is below that 30% threshold, or to request credit limit increases or get other credit cards to make sure that your ceiling between all of your credit limits is higher. So that's how I would advise managing that. That's a fantastic question. And I'm going to reserve some time in just a moment here to make sure we get to all of your questions. But last three things I want to go over are the most common strategies for addressing debt. So big thing we're probably going to have to do when it comes to improving our credit is to take care of some past due debt or just some debt that we need to get paid down. First strategy would be our self-help strategy. So what do we want to do if we're just going to try to go at it on our own? So I kind of break it apart in two different categories here. First would be if you have current on-time things that you are paying, such as credit cards or other debts that are still on track. You want to make sure you're maintaining, again, your good payment history on those debts, and then you want to try to address the smaller balances first. The reason being is because you'll be able to eliminate those balances faster, and then there's fewer items owed on your credit history, which can actually help improve your score faster. If it comes to things that are negative, like collection accounts or judgments, similar strategy, but the only difference is on some of the larger balances, you can attempt to negotiate settlements. So we're talking about a collection or a judgment. Those are already considered negative items on our credit report and to our credit score. So the goal is to eliminate those accounts as fast as possible. And that's where a settlement can be beneficial. Normally, it would not be beneficial to a current account, but with a past due account, it would be. And what that means is we would come in and say, all right, this balance is $1,000, but it's gone to collections. It's been sold off to a debt buyer. I have $500 that I could pay right now. So we negotiate for that collection agency or that debt buyer to accept that $500 is payment in full. And then the account is zeroed out. So the thing to be aware of there is, again, it can be beneficial because we're getting that discount. We're paying those things off faster. But anytime that we get a discount on a debt that is greater than $600, it becomes taxable income. Right, so you just need to be aware of those ramifications and make sure that you understand whether or not it's still going to be beneficial for you to do that. Another thing you could do is reach out to an organization like ours for credit counseling and debt management. There are a lot of nonprofit financial counseling organizations that offer a debt management plan where they work with credit card companies that give them concessions on their interest rates. and will reduce the interest greatly and help you to be able to repay those debts with one monthly payment. And it will bring down not only the overall cost, but also the length of time that it would be to repay those credit card debts. On the flip side of that, one service that I would encourage you to really think through and possibly avoid is a debt settlement service. And what this means is there's a company out there that says, okay, you've got credit card debt that you're trying to pay. Well, we can help you pay off that debt for 50 cents on the dollar. And I'm talking about credit card debt you're currently paying, like you're making monthly payments. But what they do is they take all those debts and they stop paying them. And they take monthly payments from you and they put those monthly payments in an escrow account. And they try to save up all of this money so that they can go to the debt collectors that eventually are going to collect on that account, and they try to negotiate a settlement like I described before. Well, the problem with that is all of your accounts have become delinquent, and at the same time, it doesn't always work, right? Sometimes those creditors become wise to it, and they're like, nope, we're not going to play with those guys. So it really is damaging to a lot of people's credit if it's structured in a negative way like I described before. The problem is to the consumer, it seems the same, because it seems like you're just making a 1 month consolidated payment to this company who's handling it for you. But on the back end, they are not paying those accounts like a nonprofit credit counseling agency would, right? They're not keeping those payments on time for you. So your credit score can take a major hit. And then lastly, we'll wrap up with this. Debt consolidation loans sometimes can be very beneficial if you're going to go to a financial institution, take out a new loan to repay your other loans. The main thing is you just got to crunch the numbers and make sure that that math works out for your situation and that you understand what you're trading. Are you doing a home equity loan and possibly now securing your credit card debt to your home equity, and whether or not that's something you're comfortable with and is beneficial for you? And then the last strategy resort would be bankruptcy. All right, I mentioned it a little bit earlier on. There's two types of bankruptcy, Chapter 13 and Chapter 7. Chapter 13 is a repayment plan that the court sets up and usually takes about 5 years. And then anything that's unpaid after that repayment plan is discharged or wiped away through the bankruptcy. And then with a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, there's no repayment plan, and the court just basically determines how much needs to be discharged, and then the consumer can walk clear and free and start fresh again. Now, obviously, that's not something we would want to do, but it's there for a reason. And even if somebody does have to file for bankruptcy, there are ways back on track. There is a path back to good credit that is probably not as long as most folks think. Even though it might be reported for 7 to 10 years, our credit can be restored in 2 to 3 years if we work and take the right steps and do some of the things that we talked about tonight. So I know that was a lot to cover, but again, hopefully it just helped to open up everyone's thoughts as to the things that you might want to start focusing on and some of the resources that are out there to help you. The main thing I would encourage you to do is to find good support within your own circles, as well as within other organizations locally, like us, like some of the others that are out there in the nonprofit world that do financial education. We have a lot of financial institutions and credit unions that are doing great work, such as ESL, as you know. So get that support, continue to take steps forward, and we're happy to help you and to be a part of that journey as well. So with that, I think we're going to open the floor to questions. Great. So the question was, what are some of the biggest scams that we see with credit? I think a lot of them really come down to credit report scams, where individuals, businesses set themselves up as a credit repair institution, where they're going to, wipe away all this information on your credit report, and they'll promise that they can get rid of negative information, etc. The truth is, nobody can wipe off accurate information. So what they'll do often is just dispute everything on your credit report, hoping that there will be some sort of glitch in the system to where they have to remove it from your credit report because they can't figure out if it's true or not. And even if that were the case, once that once that creditor verifies that dispute, it goes back on your credit report. So they might temporarily fix someone's credit score through that process, but it's not a permanent fix. And usually the way that they go about it is illegal. So when it comes to credit repair and disputing things, as you heard, that's something you could do for yourself pretty easily for free. And a lot of those organizations charge an incredible amount of money for that service. So just watch out for anybody promising to fix your credit and remove accurate information. If you need to dispute something, as we learned tonight, that's something that we can all do for ourselves. Very good question. Yes, sir. That's a great question. So in talking about asking for a credit limit increase to combat the issue of having a higher credit utilization ratio, does it affect your credit? And this, I'm glad you asked that, because it kind of brings us back to something that I wanted to talk about before, and that was inquiries or credit checks. So anytime that we apply for credit, that financial institution is likely going to check our credit report. When they do that, that credit check is marked on our credit report as what they call a hard inquiry. Now, there's another type of inquiry called a soft inquiry, and that means that our credit was checked for another purpose. Nobody applied for a loan. So maybe we checked our own credit through annualcreditreport.com, or you came to Consumer Credit Counseling Service to get financial counseling, and we pulled your credit report. Those soft inquiries have no bearing on our credit score at all. You could check your own credit every single day of your life, won't affect you. On the other hand, the hard inquiries can have a negative impact on our credit score. So that's where you can have an effect if you're not careful. And you can ask before they go through with the process of credit limit increase. You can ask, would this be a hard inquiry on my credit reports? Now with that, the other caveat I'll say is the impact is usually fairly small, by like 5 points at the most. Where it usually gets people with the inquiries is if they're doing the shopping like Matt talked about before, right? We're at the mall and we go to like 5 different stores and we get a credit card at each of those stores. Those will definitely be a pretty big hit to our credit score, because there's like 5 different inquiries in one day. They're like, what's this person doing? Like, are they in trouble? They're trying to get credit cards to extend their income, etc. So that's the only way that you probably have to really be careful with requesting a limit increase on your credit card. So long answer to a very good question. Yes, sir. That's a great question. Can debt to income ratio affect your credit score? No, not the credit score that is found, with our consumer report. And internally at a financial institution, they might have their own kind of credit score that they use that evaluates all of those components of our credit. But when it comes to like our FICO score, it's not going to affect it, because again, our FICO score and the consumer credit scores are only built around the information that is in our credit report. And our income is not in our credit report. So they will not know our debt to income ratio in our credit report. A really good question. I don't know if I've ever had that question. So that's unusual, because I've been at this for a long time. Yes, sir. So the question was, will services like Credit Karma affect our credit score negatively in any way through inquiries? Not that I'm aware of. I'm almost positive that the inquiries made through Credit Karma, just when you are checking your own credit, are soft inquiries. Now, if you use Credit Karma to maybe take one of their offers, right? Because I think they offer different promotions and whatnot, then there could be an inquiry that's made from that's a hard inquiry. So just be careful about that. Mhm. Okay, that's interesting. There's a lot of misinformation out there with these kinds of things. One thing that would kind of give me some pause there is that when it comes to the difference between the soft inquiries and the hard inquiries, the other thing that's interesting is those soft inquiries actually don't go on a credit report that a bank or financial institution will see. So they wouldn't even know that those exist. When we get our annual credit report, we'll see the soft inquiries, but they normally wouldn't see those. So I wouldn't think you need to cancel Credit Karma. Again, I think the only time it would affect us is if we then like took one of their promotions and applied for something. Yeah, that's really interesting. Very interesting. Someone else over here have a question? Yes, sir. Yeah, so the difference between when a settlement can be a bad thing or a good thing is the question. So a settlement can be a good thing if we're addressing items on our credit report that are already considered negative, like a collection account or a judgment. Because they're already considered negative, settling on them is not going to further reduce, make a bigger impact, I guess is what I'm trying to say. On the other hand, if it's an account that is current, like a credit card that we're just keeping up with the minimum payments, but it's not in collections, it's not, in a negative state, and we settle on that, now it shows that we're not meeting that obligation anymore, and it becomes a negative thing. And then secondly, within some of those services that I talked about, they basically just kind of enact that with every credit card that we own, right? They just put them all in that settlement state, and our credit score takes a big hit because for all intents and purposes, they were positive, maybe not with the balance that we owe, but with our payment history. And now they just tank that payment history with that settlement. So if you're ever having a question with something specific like that, you could always give us a call, and anybody who answers the phone can help you kind of work through whether or not that's going to be a good thing. So very good question. Yes, sir. Right. That's a good question. The question was, if we settle on a delinquent account, like a delinquent installment loan, but it's still going to stay on our credit report, is it worth it? I think it can be. So again, just because it's a good question you brought up because it brings up another important point. Just because we pay off a delinquent account doesn't mean it will be removed from our credit report. You could possibly negotiate that, but there are some laws around it. Like they still have to maintain accurate credit reporting. So the 7-year reporting period is typically still going to go through its entire span. So it'd probably be important just to know kind of where you're at in that 7-year reporting period. But the reason why settling can still be helpful is because one thing the credit score does is it counts the number of delinquent accounts owed. So getting it to a zero balance will reduce the number of delinquent accounts owed, even though that account is going to stay on there as a zero balance. Now, they should definitely report it as a zero balance if it's settled. And if they're not doing that, then you can dispute it for sure. But that's kind of how I've always fallen on that. The nice thing about a lot of the consumer credit scores that we get as well, like if we were to go to FICO.com and get our credit score, or if you came to us and we were to get your credit score, they will give you the top reasons or the top things that are affecting your credit score. And that's how I've come to know about the number of delinquent accounts with balances is one that tends to fall to the top of that list quite often. Yes, sir. The question is, how does age affect your credit, or does it? It shouldn't affect your credit in the fact that like what your date of birth is calculated into your credit score. That would be illegal according to the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. But in one sense, our age can affect our credit score because of the length of time issue that I brought up before. So as a young person, even if we do all the right things and when we're 18, right out of the gate, we go out, we get a secured credit card, we start making some positive payment history, it's going to take time for us to build up our credit score because time is just one of those factors built into it. And we're probably not going to get the maximum benefit of that time element for another 5 to 10 years. So that's where age can be a bit of a factor inadvertently. But our age in and of itself cannot be weighed in as a like risk factor. Yes. Yeah, so any job. In fact, it's interesting. The question is, talked about credit scores affecting our jobs that we apply for, what kind of jobs can they affect? Pretty much any kind of job, as long as it can be demonstrated that it relates to the job. So a lot of CEOs or CFOs, even if it's at a nonprofit organization or anywhere, might have to have a credit check done because they're going to be handling the organization's finances. Therefore, their personal credit does matter because if they owe tons and tons of debt, there is a temptation. I believe that the police force in Rochester still requires credit checks because of, again, they're going to be handling money at different times, confiscating things, and they believe that there is an issue with, if there's a credit issue, there's more temptation. And we've worked with a lot of young people who are planning on entering the police force to help them to make sure they've got their credit on track to be able to do that smoothly. So it's really wild just how this all comes together. And I did a talk about this a few years ago for Rochester Works because it was employment related. They wanted me to talk about how credit is used in employment credit checks. And I looked up some statistics, and it was like 70% of all employers for at least some level of job in their organization do a credit check. So it really blew my mind how many more organizations are doing that now. Now, again, for most positions in the organization, they're probably not going to do it because it's an expense, right? If it really doesn't matter, they probably don't want to have to pay that expense for all their frontline workers or something like that. If you're going to try to work at a local major financial institution, yeah, no matter what position you take in that financial institution, they're checking your credit for sure. Matt. Yeah, that's another good question related to the inquiry issue. So the question is, there's a lot of financial institutions or mortgage lenders who will advise folks to do all of their applications and their shopping around for loans within a certain span of time because of how it will be reported to our credit report. And actually that is true. So hard inquiries, typically any of them that occur within a 2-week span of time, will only be counted as one against our credit score, typically. So it's kind of the safe window. Certain variations of the credit score, it doesn't work that way, but that's just your safest bets. Now, if it comes to credit card inquiries, those you just want to be careful about no matter when you're doing them, because those are looked at a little bit differently. When it comes to home loans and car loans, they know that people are shopping around. So typically you're going to probably be applying to a bunch of different places, or you might go to an auto company that puts your credit application out to like 10 different financing companies to try to get you financed, right? So it's 10 different inquiries, and that's why they usually just count those as one. So that was a really good question. Yes, sir. So the question is, if you own a business, you have credit through your business, how does it correlate to your personal credit? It can correlate to your personal credit if you have to be a co-signer on any of those loans for that business. Or even if you're an authorized user of one of those accounts. On the other hand, if that's not the case, so for example, somebody has a corporate card with the company they work for and their name's just on the card, it's not going to be reported to their personal credit. So only if the arrangement for the credit is such where you are personally liable or tied to that loan in some way, then it's probably going to appear on your personal credit history as well. Yep, another great question. Well, this has been fantastic because I was telling Malik, it's been like a year and a half since I've been able to do something like this in person and answer these types of questions and have great discussion like this. So really appreciate everyone being here and for such thoughtfulness and for everybody being so welcome. Again, we would love to be a resource for you and to continue to offer support throughout your journey as you're doing your wealth building, as you're trying to improve your credit. We want to be here for you. There's probably many, many more questions that are going to come up along the way. And that's our passion. So feel free to reach out anytime. With that, I'll turn it back over to
absolutely.
Matt.
Let's give a round of applause for Chad. Hey, and thank you so much for coming. I know I've been in real estate for 15 years and I picked up a lot of stuff tonight and it was definitely very beneficial. So thank you so much for doing that. We have actually, do you have that little clicker thing? Okay. Before I forget, let me see here. Oh, here. Anybody know who this guy is? Orlando Ortiz? Is Orlando Ortiz here? All right, he's right back there. He's actually our next Buy Back the Rock speaker. He's gonna talk to you about his real estate journey, his background. So we got that coming up July 29th. So definitely mark your calendars. We'll push out an invite for that as well and follow up this week. We do have some books to give away. Actually, Harold has got some books to give away.
Yes, my beautiful wife. She'll be. If you have not read Rich Dad Poor Dad, raise your hand. Okay, numbers are getting smaller. Please hand those out. That's one of my favorite books that changed our lives, and so we try to get this in the hands of many people as we can. So that's our gift to you. Read it, then read it again. Oh, I have some more. Read it, then read it again, and then apply it to your life.
Yeah, this is the thing is that we don't get taught about money, right? We don't get taught about money and taxes, which are some pretty important things. Not in schools. My parents really didn't teach me about it either. So Rich Dad Poor Dad was definitely a book that changed my life. It's changed the lives of probably millions of people, and it totally flipped the script on how I thought about finances and money and stuff like that. So definitely drink that in. So anyways, thank you all for coming tonight and hang out for a little bit and network. This is where the magic happens. There's actually life-changing connections that have happened pre-COVID when we were having these monthly events. I think Demetrius can attest to that as well. I know I can. So definitely thank you for coming, and we'll see you next month.